Now it's the first day of the elk hunt. Got up about 3:30, drove to my spot, hiked for an hour and a half in the dark, overwatching a little valley. The bulls are bugling all around me. So we'll see what happens. I didn't hear any in the dark, so that made me kind of worried, but now that it's getting light, they've started bugling. So we'll see what happens.
Every hunt starts out hopeful. If you're not starting that way, you wouldn't even try. I think you might already have a clue about how this hunt ended, but it started pretty eventful. That bush right there, right at shooting light, an elk was bugling from right behind it. He sat there for about 10-15 minutes. He just needed to take a step or two, and my hunt would be over, essentially almost as soon as it began. That really seemed to be the story of this elk hunt. Nobody wants to watch a video about an unsuccessful hunt, and I don't blame you. Truth be told, I don't really want to make a video about an unsuccessful hunt, but sometimes that's the way it goes. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and come up with some philosophy about how it wasn't really a failure. I set out to shoot an elk, and I didn't succeed. That's a failure. Failure's not much fun. I try and avoid it as much as possible. However, the thing about failure, you just have to get up, regroup, take the lessons you learned, and hopefully turn it into experience. That's really the only way I've been able to gain experience, is through failure. I did get to see a lot of cool country and have a lot of cool experiences, so I hope you'll enjoy them as much as I did, even though my hunt ended in failure. That dang elk taunted me for about another half hour. He was actually walking down the trail that I'd hiked in on to get to where I was sitting, and about every 5 minutes or so he'd bugle just to let me know he was there, even though because of the brush I didn't have a chance to shoot at him. I never actually did see him. After a while he headed out and bedded down. In this exact same place I had 2 other opportunities where I was within 50 feet of elk, and I could just never see them. They outsmarted me for sure. A lot of people have the patience to just sit and watch a spot and wait for that elk to come through. I probably would have had better success if I'd done that, but the only way I know is to just start putting on the miles. So I hiked, and I hiked. Found a grouse or 2, okay, like almost 100. That kept it interesting anyways. I wasn't really hopeful that I would get a shot at any hiking. The brush was pretty crackly, and it was really warm, so the elk were going to be bedded down in the deep timber. However, if you hike enough, you might get lucky and see an elk that doesn't see you. That's kind of what I was hoping for. I came back to where I'd started that morning, hoping that elk would come back. He did, but he waited until after shooting light, and then he let out one long bugle just to let me know he was there. The next morning, hiking up through some Quakies, I stopped to watch some deer. If I'd kept moving another 100 yards, I would have had a perfect shot at some elk that came running through the Quakies. As it was, all I could do was sit there and watch. I never had a clear shot, and they were moving pretty quick. That night, in nearly the same area, I spotted about 10 cows trailing through the sagebrush. There should have been a bull at the end, and I waited and waited. He never showed up. Story of my life. A bear had recently climbed this Quakey. His muddy prints were still on the trunk.
So this big old tree just fell down.
The next day was windy, and I didn't spot a single elk, but I did have 3 trees crash down close by. I guess that's exciting.
Still a bunch of dust in the air, getting in my eyes and stuff. Not sure. which one of those two it was. I think it was the one that's leaning left.
Many more hours of hiking and hiking. I did find some elk sign like this elk bed. These piles of sawmill waste were pretty cool. They'd been there for a while. Despite the dry brush and crackling leaves, I was able to get pretty close to this set of does and just watch them feed out into the meadow. It's usually hard to get good footage of animals with a GoPro, but this grouse let me get close enough that it wasn't a problem at all. Just taking her time. My last evening, I sat on a water hole about a quarter mile from where I ran into those bulls the first morning. The last hour of daylight, I could hear a bull working his way into that water hole. He stopped right behind the trees, right at the edge of the water hole. Didn't even see him. This is beginning to be a familiar story of my hunt. The final morning of my hunt, I decided to hang out where I saw that bull and cow run across through the Quakies. I had a very specific spot in mind where I wanted to sit. However, because I could hear elk in the area, I stopped at a slightly different place, only about 100 feet from where I was originally planning on sitting. I had a whole herd of elk feed right up to that spot where I was going to sit. In fact, I watched a bull right through this small little opening. He needed to take 2 steps and I'd have a shot. Of course, about that point, I managed to spook a doe that had fed within about 30 feet of me, and off he ran. And that was the end of my morning.
It's the end of what's been a long, tough elk hunting season. I spent the last 6 days hiking 8 to 10 miles a day, sitting on water holes, on ridges, in between, and frankly, pretty disappointed with the number of elk that I've seen. Usually, when I hike that much, I'll see more than the one group that I bumped in 6 days of hiking. I don't expect to be able to get a shot at them necessarily, but I do expect to at least know I bumped a couple of groups. But has been a fun hunt. Not gonna lie. Thanks to the scouting I did, I actually did locate a couple of groups of bulls before the hunt, and all of the luck that I did have came from sitting on those bulls either at night or in the morning. And so there's just something about being really close to a bull, knowing that any second he could step out in the open. It's just amazing. Way different than deer hunting, because you never know they're there till they step out into the opening. With bulls, when you get an occasional bugle, you know they're there. So it's been a long, kind of frustrating hunt, and I hate to call it close, but today's the end of the days that I had allotted. Time to get back to work, and my family would probably like to see me once in a while as well. But did have a good time. Got to see a lot of country I hadn't seen before. Would have liked to have a freezer full of elk meat, but that's the breaks. Now I also know where all the grouse are, because I swear I found like 50 of them hiking the hills, so I'll probably go chase them some more. And then right about now is when some of the good fishing starts. So plenty of adventures left this year. And we'll see you on the next one.